The 2024 Porsche Cayenne S. This is the refreshed version, and according to Porsche, they call it one of the most extensive product upgrades in their history. One main reason for this is because the V8 is back in the Cayenne S, baby. That's right, in a time when every single auto manufacturer is downsizing, Porsche decides to increase the cylinder count on the Cayenne and give the people what they want. And that engine is a familiar 4-liter twin turbocharged V8 making 468 horsepower and 442 pounds-feet of torque. It's mated to an 8-speed Tiptronic automatic transmission, and it's putting power down to all 4 wheels. Now, jumping from a 6 to an 8-cylinder netted the Cayenne S an additional 34 horsepower and 37 pounds-feet of torque, and as a result improved 0 to 60 time by 0.2 of a second, coming in at 4.7 seconds and 4.4 when equipped with Sport Chrono. Now, when compared to the base Cayenne, the Cayenne S has a staggering 120 horsepower difference and a 0 to 60 time that's a full second faster. Next, you've got bigger rotors in the Cayenne S, 16 inches versus 15 in the base, but the pistons are the same at 6 in the front and 4 in the rear. As far as the suspension goes, the base Cayenne and the Cayenne S both come with the same setup, fixed springs with PASM adaptive dampers, and both also have the option for air suspension. Now, speaking of the suspension, Porsche did say it's been reworked and makes the Cayenne ride more comfortably at slow speeds and better manage body weight at high speeds, which I can certainly attest to being true after driving the base, but we'll see for this S. And now the interior, and since I've already done an in-depth look in here when I reviewed the base Cayenne, which I'll link in the description below, you can watch that after you're done with this video, I'm just going to highlight the changes, covering them in 2 themes. Number 1, it's cleaner, and number 2, there's more technology. Let's start with the cleaner, or maybe a better way to put it is less cluttered or more organized. The shifter is moved up on the dash, and the center console area toggles are laid out much better. These changes result in a clean, simple space with more storage. Now, one interesting item, there's no more key fob to turn over here. You'll notice that it's a push button start, and that's as a result of the refresh now making push button start a standard feature across every single Cayenne trim level. Next, let's move to the technology. Big changes, the gauges. They're adopted from the Taycan. It's a 12.6-inch curved widescreen display, and I absolutely love this thing because of the way it looks. It's also got great functionality, it's very easy to use and to customize. I read some concerns about visibility given that it doesn't have a hood, but no concerns there. When I drove the base version in various different lighting settings, I had no issues with it. Next, the infotainment screen is the same and PCM is revised, but mostly the same, sans some upgraded graphics and such. And finally, the Cayenne now has the option for a 3rd screen over on the passenger side. It has some sort of privacy glass so the driver won't get distracted, but it's really cool. The passenger even has the ability to stream video and mess around with other entertainment related items. So that's the interior in a nutshell. Now let's see how this V8 drives. Alright, so let's see what this thing feels like behind the wheel, but before getting started, a difference between this car and the Cayenne base coupe that I drove a couple weeks ago. So obviously V6 versus V8, and the base Cayenne that I drove actually had the air suspension. So this doesn't, and it's on the fixed spring, but of course still has PASM and the adaptive dampers. And this has the sport mufflers, which I'm not really sure is really going to make a difference versus it not being there, but obviously the V8 and the V6 are just going to sound different. Now let's go ahead and turn this thing on. Start stop here on the left. V8 is not the loudest at startup, but obviously you can certainly tell it is a V8. It does have that V8 rumble. All right, now let's go ahead and put this thing in drive. And it's a little odd. When I first got into the Cayenne, I'm sorry, not the Cayenne, the Taycan, and the shifter was up here on the dash, I was looking for the shifter, and it was kind of difficult to find, but now I'm used to it. I've driven plenty of Taycans and then this Cayenne now as well. But let's roll here for a second and come to this stop sign in front of us, and then we'll go ahead and test the acceleration. All right, stop sign. V8 Cayenne S. Let's see what it's got. Mash. Oh, throttle response, not bad. Oh, pretty quick. All right, so that was in normal mode. I'm gonna go ahead and put it in Sport Plus, and what that will do is open up the baffles, and the exhaust note does get a little burblier, for the lack of a better term, in this when the car is idling like this. And turning radius, not the best. Wasn't able to make that. I need a 3-point turn here, but it's a big, heavy car. All right, from a stop again, and I'm not going to use launch control. This is a brand new car. Oh, you can definitely feel a little bit of a difference in sport mode. And the exhaust note definitely comes in louder. And the really nice thing about this, yes, this is not the PDK, but the automatic is, I would say, like 90% of the way there. Yes, the PDK is a lot crisper than this and a lot sharper, but the Porsche automatic is really good as well. Now let's do it again. Oh yeah, really quick. Yeah, it really gets up and goes. You can absolutely notice the difference between this and the base. This is significantly quicker. The V8 note is there, obviously, and makes a little bit more engine noise, but to say that it's substantial wouldn't be honest, wouldn't be telling the whole story there. But again, you still do get that V8, and then the push, the shove is much greater in this than the base, and of course that's expected. The horsepower difference and the torque difference is monstrous. But considering the fact that this is a V8, it is still a very smooth V8, so driving it on a daily basis is good. Sometimes you get V8s and they're kind of lumbery and kind of edgy. This one is very nice. It's not as smooth as a V6, but it is pretty much almost there. Now, some of the other things about this compared to the base, and I'm going to touch on that suspension item. So that was the base that I drove was riding on the air shocks. This is riding on the fixed shocks. So notable differences I can tell from behind the wheel here. So from a sporty standpoint, this feels slightly sportier than the air shock. And I criticize the air shock in the base Cayenne for being somewhat soft and losing that Porsche feeling, that sportiness that you get in all Porsche cars, no matter which trim you're in, whether it's a base or in the higher trims, it obviously gets sportier. But most base Porsches still feel sporty, and I feel like that was a little lacking in the base Cayenne. Now, I'm not sure if that's because of the air shock compared to the fixed shock in this. I'm not sure if that's because it's Cayenne S versus base Cayenne, and the adaptive dampening tuning is just supposed to be stiffer in the Cayenne S, but it definitely feels sportier in the Cayenne S than it does in the base Cayenne. Now, from a comfort standpoint, even though this is sportier than the base Cayenne that I drove, it's still very nice to drive, soaks up the bumps really nicely, and provides wonderful ride quality, and something that would be great to drive on a daily basis. I'm driving here in some of the streets in downtown LA where it's kind of bumpy. The road here actually I'm driving on is not that bad, but I was driving on some roads earlier, and this does a really nice job in giving you comfort that you would expect when you're driving to work, when you're going to pick your kids up, going to a dinner. It's really nice, even though it's still sportier and a little more stiffer than the base Cayenne. Now, one of the things I will tell you that the air suspension does better than this, the fixed suspension, is management of body roll and body movement. The Cayenne is a big and heavy car, and typically when you've got those characteristics, body motions, when you're giving it inputs, the body transfer and the body weight transfer is immediately noticeable. And I felt that in the air shock, it's a lot better managed. It feels flatter when you're giving it inputs. And to be honest, I'm not surprised by that, because I drove the Macan GTS, which comes with air shocks, and I drove the Macan S, which comes with fixed shocks. And I felt the same way there. The body motions, even though the Macan is lighter, but nonetheless still an SUV and still a heavy car, the body motions were controlled much better in the air shock, and it's basically the same thing in this car. I'm going to get another straight. Let's test Sport Plus again. Oh yeah, pushes you in your seat. The V8 is nice, baby. Yeah. All right, the brake is really good too. The bigger brakes are absolutely going to be necessary in the Cayenne S, and it does hold the gear. It'll downshift for you when you want it to, contributing to that the accolades I was giving the automatic compared to the PDK. So the discussion between the air shock and the fixed PASM shock. Which one would I get? Personally, I would opt for just the standard suspension with the PASM adaptive shocks and skip the air shocks, because in reality, the comfort level in this is wonderful. You're buying a Porsche, it feels sportier in this. I like that feeling a lot better. I personally would skip, what is it, the $2,200 or $2,300 it costs to get the air suspension, and just stick with the base shock. So now let's close it off with some final thoughts. So that's the 2024 Porsche Cayenne S. This thing is really cool, and the Cayenne overall is just a wonderful SUV, and the fact that Porsche bought the V8 back again is an excellent touch. Now, what about the discussion of base Cayenne versus Cayenne S? And I know the variables are a little different now, considering the V8 is back in the S again, but still, there's a staggering $16,500 price difference between the two trim levels. So is the V8 worth it? I don't know, for me it's a little questionable, but I guess if you really wanted the V8 and the experience that comes with it, I suppose the decision is really easy. But the base Cayenne with the 6-cylinder is a really, really nice car. The power is more than enough. The interior, the exterior, and the option list are practically identical between the two trim levels. So ultimately, if it came down to it, I'm kind of leaning more towards a base Cayenne with some, I guess, optional features to make it more daily driver friendly. But ultimately, the choice is yours, and it's always nice to have options, especially when one of them is a V8. Now, as a reminder, if you're interested in a base Cayenne review, click the link in the description below and you can go ahead and watch that video. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Otherwise, thank you for watching this video. Until next time, drive steady.